Good morning. I have started recording and I am going to put our attendance question in the Zoom chat in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Our attendance question today is, what is your most used emoji? You could put the emoji in the Zoom chat or you can describe it. What is your most used emoji? What does the cryy face mean, Mahalia? I've never
Like
used that.
we're I use it all the time. Everybody in my family uses that emoji all the time, okay?
Okay.
It's like um it's something like, oh my God, I don't know how to describe it. Like yes, thank you, Alexandria. You're like crying from laughter or something.
Okay. Oh, that's
Or
hilarious.
we saw one time we saw a guy like run into a glass that was like from the ceiling to the floor instead of go through the door,
Yeah.
and we were texting about it, and we were using the crying emoji, like we were like, oh my gosh, like the crying, like I don't know, but it's used all the time in my family and with my friends.
Okay. I like it. I always thought it was just like very sad. Like I thought it was like and like crying. So I'm really glad that you explained it to me. And it looks like a lot of you are using it and I need to get on your wave. All right, for those of you who have just gotten into the Zoom chat, we are talking about emojis. Our attendance question is in the Zoom chat. Feel free to use that emoji or just to describe the emoji. My most used emoji is I probably text my oldest daughter, Sophia's mother, the most. And I text her this one. It's a wink and it's a kiss at the same time. I don't think I could actually get my face to do that, but I like it. Oh, Libby, I like yours. Salute. Is that like, aye, aye? Mm, Alexandra, what does that mean? Is that like the death skull? Oh, the skull is dead from laughter. See? This is a good attendance question. You're teaching your old lady teacher. Okay, Xavier, here is the attendance question. We're talking about emojis. We're emojiing with each other. We're emojicating. The attendance question is, what is your most used emoji? I like to watch, I haven't watched this season, but I like to watch The Circle on Netflix because I like how they're always like describing which emoji they want to use. And I'm always like, oh, that's what that emoji means. When you're not a teenager, there are just things you don't know. Okay, I haven't heard from 5 of you yet. Oh, or something's weird or cringy. Okay, I have to be careful then to use that skull one because I don't want to be cringy while saying that something is cringy. So I'm going to pop that attendance question one last time so we don't overuse emojis to describe. What is your most used emoji is our attendance question. There are 4 students from whom I've not heard. I don't know. I'm not sure, of course, are always perfect responses as well, because if you're not the kind of person who uses emojis, that would be a silly question to even be asked, right? But some of us like to talk a lot in emojis. Okay, Once you have responded to the attendance question, go to our Schoology course page so we can look at what our upcoming assignments are. And then from there, go to our week 4 agenda. I'm going to share my screen and take you there as well. I'm going to start off with our Schoology homepage. So taking a look at our upcoming assignments, we have a couple. So today your homework is going to be preparing for tomorrow's whole class discussion, which is going to be based off of the clip that we watched today, as well as the short story. It's a very short story that we are going to have time to read together in class today. Then you'll have a writing assignment tomorrow during your homework time, during your independent learning about that. You might want to complete today and tomorrow's at the exact same time. So that will help you to focus and refine and organize what you want to say tomorrow during the whole class discussion. On Thursday, we've got a discussion post that is due. And on Friday, we also have a discussion post that is due as well. I know that some of you have emailed me about the summative assessment, and I love that you're thinking about that, but I don't want you to worry too much about it because we really are still kind of in the weeds of this science fiction unit. And so it's okay to move forward in the guiding reading slide deck and to think about the summative assessment, but don't worry too much about completing it yet. You will have plenty of time to work on that in class. So looking at our week 4 agenda, today is Tuesday, December 3rd. The Zoom recording link is live from yesterday, so if you were unable to attend class yesterday, it is there. Today we are going to go to the guiding reading slide deck. We're going to look specifically at slides 19 through 21. We're going to discuss the essential learning target on slide 19. We're going to watch the matrix scene, so we're going to revisit the matrix. That is on slide 20. We're going to read the short story by Isaac Asimov called The Machine That Won the War. And then you will prepare notes for tomorrow. Let's look at that prompt about the whole discussion notes so that we have a purpose that is set already for what we're going to watch and read today. So the notes that you prepare for tomorrow's discussion should be specific and they should be detailed, but most importantly, they should be accurate and evidence-based. I want you to closely analyze the discussion prompt. So this is going to be the prompt that I'm going to put out for the beginning of the discussion tomorrow. It is asking you to draw comparisons between Neo's realization, okay, so the Keanu Reeves guy, and the main characters in Asimov's story, the realization that they come to, and then realizations that you came to while watching and reading. This is not an easy task to do, and it's going to take all of your brain power, all of your critical thinking and metacognition, thinking about your thinking skills when preparing. So I've got some advice for you. While we're reading and watching today, enjoy what we're watching, enjoy what we're reading, but maybe create some notes that are categorical with headers that look like this. So maybe like in the note section on your Mac, have a note where you copy and paste human decisions over technology in the Matrix, human decisions over technology in the machine that won the war, similarities between the two, differences between the two, Neo's realizations, characters from Asimov's short story realizations, my realizations, not mine, yours, similarities between the two, differences between the two, and the coolest thing I want to make sure I get the chance to say. Your prompt is, how do the film clips from The Matrix, so the one that we watched the week before last, and today, compare to the short story that we're going to read today, The Machine That Won the War by Isaac Asimov, which is located on slide 21 in our guiding and reading slide deck. What is their portrayal of human decisions over technology? So how do they portray it means how do they show it, or how is it revealed, or what is it? Okay, portrayal is just like a really like smart way of talking about it. Talking points you must cover. So when you're thinking about the coolest thing I want to make sure I get the chance to say, you should cover how Neo's realization, so the guy in the black sunglasses, about the Matrix parallels the characters and the reader's realization in Asimov's story about the limitations of machines. Okay, so tomorrow's discussion, you're really going to be talking about yourself, and you're really going to be like kind of talking about, based on these texts and based on all of the texts that we've watched and read and all of the things that we've said and all of the things that you've written, what are you starting to realize about the limitations of machines, about AI, about human decisions over technology? And then you're going to base that in specific and detailed and evidence-based information that you saw in the film clip and that you read in the text. Shui, go ahead with your question, hun.
Yeah. For so like tomorrow we're gonna be doing it about um the Matrix and the machine that won the world. We're not doing the Star and like the Minority Report. We're not doing the we're it's not about those tomorrow, right?
Right. Yeah, it is. We're doing new texts now.
Okay,
Okay.
thanks.
Great question. I'm really glad that you asked that. Okay, so let's go to our guiding reading slide deck. I know I promised that we would talk about the star today, and we would talk about contact, and we would look at that discussion post, which we will if we have time. I want to make sure that I am being a good steward of your time, and I am using it the way that you need. Okay, so we're going to be doing 19 through 21 today. So let's scoop down to 19. So our essential learning target now has shifted a little bit and has become a bit more refined and focused. It's, still over the science fiction terminology, but we are learning and we are striving to understand the critique of technology. So the ways in which it is right, the ways in which it is wrong, the ways in which it is applied, and the theme of human reliance on machines. So you think about, how much you rely on that Mac. Like, dang, I seriously spend like 14 hours a day looking at my Mac and then looking at my iPad and then watching TV. Like, that's pretty much all I do. I'm relying on a machine to work, to learn, to enjoy, to entertain, to communicate. And like, what does that say about me? Like I think about my father, he passed away in 2001. And if he were to just like spend an hour with me today, he would be like, when are you going outside? When are you jogging? When are you, going to just stare at a leaf? Like all of the things that you used to love to do, will you have time? Will you get the chance to do that? And I'd be like, no, Dad. Could you not do that? Okay, let's start off by watching this scene from The Matrix. You let me know if you're not able to hear. I played around with it a little bit this morning, and I think you should be able to, but you stop me and you let me know.
Matrix is a system, Neil. That system is our enemy. When you're inside, you look around, what do you see? Businessmen, teachers, lawyers, carpenters, the very minds of the people we are trying to save. But until we do, these people are still a part of that system, and that makes them our enemy. Have to understand, most of these people are not ready to be unplugged. And many of them are so inert, so hopelessly dependent on the system that they will fight to protect it. Were you listening to me, Neo? Or were you looking at the woman in the red dress? I was. Look again. Who is it? This isn't the Matrix. No. It's another training program designed to teach you one thing. If you are not one of us, you are one of them. What are they? Sentient programs. They can move in and out of any software still hardwired to their system. That means that anyone we haven't unplugged is potentially an agent. Inside the Matrix, they are everyone, and they are no one. We have survived by hiding from them, by running from them. But they are the gatekeepers. They are guarding all the doors, they are holding all the keys, which means that sooner or later, someone is going to have to fight.
Okay, so I've got a question for you. After watching that clip, my question is, what are you plugged into? Okay, so we're all plugged into some sort of matrix. My example was about always being on my Mac desktop, my iPad, or my TV. I think about in general, when I was your age, I was plugged into The Legend of Zelda. I had a hard time. I had a hard time between my real life and my Zelda life. So what are you plugged into? Like what is your thing? What is your matrix? Feel free to respond to everyone or to respond directly to me, because I know that this could potentially be not something you'd want to share with everyone. It can be anything, Shweb. We can be plugged into anything, right? Okay, there are 4 students I've not heard from yet, and I'm just going to put that question again in the Zoom chat. I'd love to hear from everyone. Thinking about that Matrix clip that we just watched, he talks to Neo, he warns Neo about who's plugged in, who's not plugged in. And my example is really that every single one of us are plugged into something. And so my question is, what are you plugged into? So true, Alexandra. Okay, now let's draw some comparisons between the Matrix film clip and the short story, The Machine That Won the War by Isaac Asimov. Remembering that you've got your discussion tomorrow and you've got some purposes that have been set for that discussion. Do you want to start taking notes now, or do you want to just listen to me read and then during independent learning prepare? However you best like to learn and you like to organize and you like to prepare. Here is a link to the short story. I am also going to share my screen with you. So if you do not want to follow that link, that is okay. You can just keep up with the short story by following along with me, and know that you can catch it in our guiding reading slide deck, or where it is linked, or through this link in the Zoom chat. So this short story is from 1961. So a very long time ago. And what's so weird is you are going to see so many current day parallels. It was almost as if there were some authors that it's almost like they were time travelers, like they knew what was going to happen. And this is one of them. The celebration had a long way to go, and even in the silent depths of Multivac's underground chambers, it hung in the air. If nothing else, there was the mere fact of isolation and silence. For the first time in a decade, technicians were not scurrying about the vitals of the giant computer. The soft lights did not wink out their erratic patterns. The flow of information in and out had halted. It would not be halted long, of course, for the needs of peace would be pressing. Yet now, for a day, perhaps for a week, even Multivac might celebrate the great time and rest. Lamar Swift took off the military cap he was wearing and looked down the long and empty main corridor of the enormous computer. He sat down rather warily in one of the technician's swing stools, and his uniform, in which he had never been comfortable, took on a heavy and wrinkled appearance. He said, "I'll miss it all after a grisly fashion. It's hard to remember when we weren't at war with Deneb, and it seems against nature now to be at peace and to look at the stars without anxiety." The two men with the executive director of the Solar Federation were both younger than Swift. Neither was as gray, neither looked quite as tired. John Henderson, thin-lipped and finding it hard to control the relief he felt in the midst of triumph, said, "They're destroyed, they're destroyed. It's what I keep saying to myself over and over, and I still can't believe it. We all talked so much over so many years about the menace hanging over Earth and all its worlds, over every human being, and all the time it was true, every word of it. And now we're alive, and it's the Demians who are shattered and destroyed. There'll be no menace now ever again." "Thanks to Multivac," said Swift, with a quiet glance at the interminable Jablonski, who through all the war had been chief interpreter of science's oracle. "Right, Max?" Jablonski shrugged. Automatically, he reached for a cigarette and decided against it. He alone, of all the thousands who had lived in the tunnels within Multivac, had been allowed to smoke, but toward the end he had made definite efforts to avoid making use of the privilege. He said, "Well, that's what they say." His broad thumb moved in the direction of his right shoulder, aiming upward. "Jealous, Max? Because they're shouting for Multivac? Because Multivac is the big hero of mankind in this war?" Jablonski's craggy face took on an air of suitable contempt. "What's that to me? Let Multivac be the machine that won the war if it pleases them." Henderson looked at the other two out of the corners of his eyes. In this short interlude that the three had instinctively sought out, in the one peaceful corner of a metropolis gone mad, in this entr'acte between the dangers of war and the difficulties of peace, when for one moment they might all find surcease, he was conscious only of his weight of guilt. Suddenly, it was though that weight were too great to be borne longer. It had to be thrown off along with the war now. Henderson said, "Multivac had nothing to do with the victory. It's just a machine." "A big one," said Swift. "Then just a big machine. No better than the data fed it." For a moment he stopped, suddenly unnerved at what he was saying. Jablonski looked at him, his thick fingers once again fumbling for a cigarette and once again drawing back. "You should know. You supplied the data. Or is it just that you're taking the credit?" "Whoa," said Henderson angrily. "There is no credit. What do you know of the data Multivac had to use? Pre-digested from 100 subsidiary computers here on Earth, on the Moon, on Mars, even on Titan. With Titan always delayed, and always that feeling that its figures would introduce an unexpected bias. It would drive anyone mad," said Swift with gentle sympathy. Henderson shook his head. It wasn't just that. I admit that 8 years ago, when I replaced LaPont as chief programmer, I was nervous. But there was an exhilaration about things in those days. The war was still long range, an adventure without real danger. We hadn't reached the point where manned vessels had to take over and where interstellar warps could swallow up a planet clean if named correctly. But then, when the real difficulties began, angrily, he could finally permit anger, he said, "You know nothing about it." "Well," said Swift, "tell us." "The war is over. We've won." "Yes," Henderson nodded his head. He had to remember that. Earth had won, so all had been for the best. Well, the data became meaningless. Meaningless? You mean that literally? Said Jablonski. Literally. What would you expect? The trouble with you two was that you weren't out in the thick of it. You never left Multivac Max, and you, Mr. Director, never left the mansion except on state visits where you saw exactly what they wanted you to see. I was not as unaware of that, said Swift, as you may have thought. Do you know, said Henderson, to what extent data concerning our production capacity, our resource potential, our trained manpower, everything of importance to the war effort, in fact, had become unreliable and untrustworthy during the last half of the war? Group leaders, both civilian and military, were intent on projecting their own improved image, so to speak, so they obscured the bad and magnified the good. Whatever the machines might do, the men who programmed them and interpreted the results had their own skins to think of and competitors to stab. There was no way of stopping that. I tried and failed. Of course, said Swift in quiet consolation. I can see that you would. This time Jablonski decided to light his cigarette. Yet, I presume you provided Multivac with data in your programming. You said nothing to us about unreliability. How could I tell you? And if I did, how could you afford to believe me? Demanded Henderson savagely. Our entire war effort was geared to Multivac. It was the one great weapon on our side, for the Denebians had nothing like it. What else kept up morale in the face of doom but the assurance that Multivac would always predict and circumvent any Denbian move, and would always direct and prevent the circumvention of our moves? Great space, after our spy warp was blasted out of hyperspace, we lacked any reliable Denebian data to feed Multivac, and we didn't dare make that public. True enough, said Swift. Well then, said Henderson, if I told you the data was unreliable, what could you have done but replace me and refuse to believe me? I couldn't allow that. What did you do? Said Jablonski. Since the war is won, I'll tell you what I did. I corrected the data. How? Asked Swift. Intuition, I presume. I juggled them till they looked right. At first, I hardly dared. I changed a bit here and there to correct that, were obvious impossibilities. When the sky didn't collapse about us, I got braver. Toward the end, I scarcely cared. I just wrote out the necessary data as it was needed. I even had the Multivac Annex prepare data for me according to a private programming pattern I had devised for the purpose. Random figures? Said Jablonski. Not at all. I introduced a number of necessary biases. Jablonski smiled quite unexpectedly, his dark eyes sparkling behind the crinkling of the lower lids. 3 times a report was brought me about unauthorized uses of the annex, and I let it go each time. If it had mattered, I would have followed it up and spotted you, John, and found out what you were doing. But of course, nothing about Multivac mattered in those days, so you got away with it. What do you mean nothing mattered? Asked Henderson suspiciously. Nothing did. I suppose if I had told you this at the time, it would have spared you your agony, but then if you had told me what you were doing, it would have spared me mine. What made you think Multivac was in working order, whatever the data you supplied it? Not in working order, said Swift. Not really. Not reliably. After all, what were my technicians in the last years of the war? I'll tell you, they were feeding computers on 1,000 different space devices. They were gone. I had to make do with kids I couldn't trust and veterans who were out of date. Besides, do you think I could trust the solid state components coming out of cryogenics in the last years? Cryogenics wasn't any better placed as far as personnel was concerned than I was. To me, it didn't matter whether the data being supplied Multivac were reliable or not. The results weren't reliable. That much I knew. What did you do? Asked Henderson. I did what you did, John. I introduced the bugger factor. I adjusted matters in accordance with intuition, and that's how the machine won the war. Swift leaned back in the chair and stretched his legs out before him. Ooh, such revelations. It turns out then that the material handed me to guide me in my decision-making capacity was a man-made interpretation of man-made data? Isn't that right? It looks so, said Jablonski. Then I perceive I was correct in not placing too much reliance upon it, said Swift. You didn't? Jablonski, despite what he had just said, managed to look professionally insulted. I'm afraid I didn't. Multivac might seem to say, strike here, not there, do this, not that, wait, don't act, but I could never be certain that what Multivac seemed to say really did say, or what it really said it really meant. I could never be certain. But the final report was always plain enough, sir, said Jablonski, to those who did not have to make the decision, perhaps, not to me. The horror of the responsibility of such decisions was unbearable, and not even Multivac was sufficient to remove the weight. But the point is, I was justified in doubting, and there is tremendous relief in that. Caught up in the conspiracy of mutual confession, Jablonski put titles aside. What was it you did then, Lamar? After all, you did make decisions. How? Well, it's time to be getting back, perhaps, but I'll tell you first. Why not? I did make use of a computer Max, but an older one than Multivac, much older. He groped in his own pocket for cigarettes and brought out a package along with a scattering of small change, old-fashioned coins dating to the first years before the metal shortage had brought into being a credit system tied to a computer complex. Swift smiled rather sheepishly. I still need these to make money seem substantial to me. An old man finds it hard to abandon the habits of youth. He put a cigarette between his lips and dropped the coins one by one back into his pocket. He held the last coin between his fingers, staring absently at it. Multivac is not the first computer, friends, nor the best known, nor the one that can most efficiently lift the load of decision from the shoulders of the executive. A machine did win the war, John. At least a very simple computing device did, one that I used every time I had a particularly hard decision to make. With a faint smile of reminiscence, he flipped the coin he held. It glinted in the air as it spun and came down in Swift's outstretched palm. His hand closed over it and brought it back down on the back of his left hand. His hand remained in place, hiding the coin. Heads or tails, gentlemen, said Swift. Okay, so now that we have read The Machine That Won the War, what is coming to you about ways that you might talk about it tomorrow? Okay, so I've got a question in the Zoom chat, and I'm hoping that this gets you in the direction of thinking about tomorrow. And that is, what realizations did you come to while listening to me read Okay, so I've got an exit ticket question. This will hopefully get you starting to think about how you're going to respond to the discussion, maybe give you some ideas of things you might put into ChatGPT. Your question for your exit ticket is in the Zoom chat. What realizations about technology and our role in it did you come to while listening to me read the short story? Okay. Once you have responded, feel free to log off and get to working on your independent learning. Have a great rest of your Tuesday. I can't wait for our discussion tomorrow. Bye-bye. Don't forget to respond to the attendance question. Got some great responses in there. Answer the attendance question and log off, and I will see you tomorrow. Here's our exit ticket question one more time in the Zoom chat. Respond, and then All right, feel free to log off after you respond to the exit ticket question. I cannot wait for our discussion tomorrow. Yes, so wild and so accurate. Yes. Have a great rest of your Tuesday. I can't wait to see you tomorrow. Bye-bye. Don't forget to respond to the exit ticket question in the Zoom chat. I'm going to drop that one more time to make sure it is right at the top of your mental inbox.
I have a question about what we did before break.
Okay. Go ahead.
We did I wasn't there. It was like the star, some like two assignments to do with the star, and like the thingy, like you can't like submit it again. So
Not sure what your question is. Okay, so last week we read the short story The Star, and then we watched that film clip from Contact. And is there a
yeah.
okay,
So
is there
I was wondering if I could like do the two assignments for that since I wasn't there.
yes, you can still do those now. You could,
Oh,
yeah, you could just put your, is it the discussion notes?
yeah, the discussion notes and the writing assignment.
Okay, yep, you can still do those.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.